Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, October 31st, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief and founder of Bolt magazine, will be here to tell us about abortion, voting rights, key state races that are only 1 week away. Also on the program today, Israel rejects a ceasefire as Israeli troops fight Hamas in northern Gaza. Over 1 million civilians displaced and over 8,500, mostly women and children, killed since the Hamas terror attack. In West Bank, illegal settlers continue to attack Palestinians. Death toll is over 100 in the West Bank. Meanwhile, in Washington, Johnson introduces a standalone Israel aid package, which cuts funding for the IRS, of course. Senate, fortunately, has other ideas. Meanwhile, speaking of Mike Johnson's wife just had to take down her website comparing gay people to bestialists.
Good.
Throwback.
Fun.
UAW's tentative agreement with GM allows for joint venture unionizing. All those joint ventures as they start to develop electric cars. And the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee are going to be subpoenaing Harlan Crow and Leonard Leo in its Supreme Court ethics investigation. Of course, every member of the Republican members of the Judiciary Committee have received donations from Harlan Crow. In Maine, police were explicitly warned over the danger from that Maine mass shooter months ago. And Elon Musk has lost $25 billion in value in Twitter in 12 months, or has it been more? All this and more. And on the Hill, Anthony Blinken testifying in front of Congress.
About Israel, yeah. We'll be monitoring that.
All this and more on today's program. Someone's saying we have a sound issue with the mic. There's an echo and a buzzing sound. Is that true?
I'm hoping that's not true.
Folks, it is Happy Halloween. Emma Vigland.
Hi.
We have not dressed up.
No.
Nope. Where is she?
Well, I mean, we talked about it, I think, right? We had some ideas, but it's not exactly.
Yeah, we weren't in the mood. Oh, can we pop Emma in? There we go.
I'm looking now. It doesn't seem like we are getting any audio issues from on YouTube, so.
Okay.
Might just be you. Hi, Emmer.
We had contemplated doing the Halloween show. Have we done one since Michael passed? No. I don't think we have. We were close. But okay, we hear no echoing and buzzing. Thank you. We were close, but the things aren't so festive these days.
I forgot
Too
it
much
was
news.
Halloween.
Too much news.
Sam was like, "It's gonna rain tonight." I'm like, "You got something
not
going
softball.
on?" I literally was like, "He's got a softball game." It's Halloween. Trick
It's
or
Halloween.
treating. Yeah.
Yes.
What is Saul being for Halloween?
You know, he found something that sort of looks like it's like what you would wear if you were hanging out in a a deer stand in the woods hunting, but I don't know what it is. He just likes it because it makes him look like a tree.
Okay.
It's some type
Oh,
of
it's like 3D camo?
yes, sort of.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. And he's walking around with a skull bag, classic 10-year-old. If it's like morbid, it's cool type
Right.
of situation.
I was a ninja around that time, and I wore my ninja costume basically every day for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm not going to be surprised if Saul does that. He may wear it a lot. Well, I will update people on how it goes tonight. We're going to have a lot of candy in the office. All right, let's go to this. I mean, we've, obviously a lot of news the past couple of days, things that we haven't paid as much attention to as we would on other days. This UAW, and again, tentative agreements now with Ford, Stellantis, and GM. This, on its face, seemed like a huge, huge win for this particular union and unionism in general. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking to Jane McAlevey more specifically about this. But here is UAW President Shawn Fain, who incidentally took, you'll recall at the beginning of this strike, as he rolled out this strategy of these rolling strikes, or these sort of like, narrowly target strikes that would expand. He took a lot of grief, in terms of strategy, or I guess tactics there. And it really seems to have paid dividends.
It was very strategic in that the plants they were targeting also were a result of, like, if certain sections were showing progress in negotiations, they would hold off there and they would strike the ones that were being more recalcitrant. And then the final thing that put it over the edge was they struck, I believe it was the biggest, I forget which big three automaker it was, but in Arlington, Texas, that was the biggest one. And that's, I think, what put it over the hump here.
But here is Shawn Fain on his Facebook Live to UAW workers yesterday.
Contract demonstrates the incredible power that workers have when they are not afraid to use it. This is why your national negotiators, the UAW Ford National Council, Vice President Browning, and myself wholeheartedly endorsed this record-breaking agreement. We went to Ford with the goal of not leaving a dime on the table, and we accomplished that. But the choice about what happens next is up to all of you. No matter what you decide, this contract remains a huge victory. For far too long, we were being left behind by an economy that only works for the billionaire class. In the billionaire's economy, working class communities continue to get left behind, plants continue to close, families continue to struggle, while the CEOs and the wealthy pocket every last dime. This contract is about more than just economic gains for auto workers. It's a turning point in the class war that's been raging in this country for the past 40 years. For too long, it's been one-sided, and working class people have been left behind. That's why this contract is more than just a contract. It's a call to action to workers everywhere to organize and fight for a better life. The auto workers at Ford just won a major battle in the fight for a better world. Billionaires aren't going to save the American dream. Working class people are saving the American dream. The UAW is saving the American dream, and we are doing it together. Thank you and good night.
Good stuff.
Very exciting. I mean, good to have some good news. And I think from what I was reading too, what's amazing about this is that the UAW was so strong in its defense of the lower tier of workers who were just consistently being their benefits being cut into, and the temp workers who were not being paid anywhere close to some sort of livable wage. The solidarity that the UAW had with those temporary workers and with full-time ones allowed for massive wage increases for everybody across the board. That's part of the historic nature of it too.
And you're taking younger people last in, essentially, and showing them the power of union from day one, or maybe not necessarily day one, but early into their careers.
And
that's,
I mean, they
you
called
can't
the shot too.
divide and conquer.
Well, they divided and conquered the big three by like you said, that basically flexible strategy that allowed them to say give in and not strike in one place with their given, where the automakers give in concessions and ramp up strikes at the other ones, and they called their shot and they got it. And it's great.
Again, we're going to talk more details with Jane McAlevey. One of the other things too, and I'm not sure if it's for all three of the car makers or just this came in GM, but the contract's going to expire on May Day, I think 4 years out. And it's just a nice touch in the event that there was a,
Well, they're going to target Tesla.
Solidarity.
They've said that they're going to target Tesla. There's UAW organizing committee at that plant in California, where 20,000 workers in Fremont work. Was that the same plant that was subjected to the racial discrimination lawsuit?
I have to check, but I believe it was.
I believe so too, but not fully confirmed. And then there are other automakers that just don't use union labor in the United States, like Toyota. They have non-union U.S. plants. Volkswagen, non-union U.S. plants. I think Mercedes too. This is a way to start to bring other people into the fold, not just workers at the big three, but workers at the other automakers where there's U.S. production.
And also, I think going to be interesting to see how it plays out in regard to one of the things that Biden's going to have a big problem with in Michigan in particular is, you've got that new polling about the reaction to
Arab
Biden's
Americans.
role in sort of unconditional support, or what appears to be unconditional support for Israel's the bombing and invasion of Gaza. One wonders what this does in terms of broadening union support for Democrats who came out very strongly. I mean, you compare and contrast where the Republican presidential candidates were, whether it was Tim Scott or Nikki Haley, or even Trump going to a non-union shop, essentially. Particularly in that, different elements of the UAW. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts, party affiliation and whatnot. But that'll all be part of it as we get a sense of this as that process goes on. We're going to be talking to Jane McAlevey again tomorrow. And in a moment, we're going to talk to Daniel Nichanian. First, a couple words from our sponsors. I've mentioned in the past that, I will buy one or two a week, particularly when I have had the kids in the past, sort of ingredient boxes for dinner meals. And I've tried a couple of different ones. And I think I found the best, HelloFresh. And for me, I mean, there are two things that make HelloFresh stand out for me, and I don't know how they pitch it, but for me, the food is great, and I've had similarly, boxes where their recipes are in this sort of same wheelhouse, but with HelloFresh, the portion sizes are perfect. There's never too little or too much. And They have recipes that take 15 to 20 minutes.
Easy.
Sometimes 35, but there's no like extravagant prep and whatnot. Simple stuff, delicious, but not crazy amount of time. I just don't have all that time to do it. And every week they got 40 recipes you can choose from. So it's easy to find something delicious. It's easy to find something, if you're like me, that is, they have like 15-minute, 20-minute, 25, 35, 45. They also have, which I know appeals to someone like Matt, one pot, like one pan meals.
I'll say these things, they teach you how to cook something new that you might not have known before either. And that's what I benefited from it.
Totally.
So this is good for men as well as women, but also men who, maybe haven't.
Need some training wheels.
Maybe a little bit of training wheels, yeah.
Right now, you can go to HelloFresh.com/50majority, 50 majority. Use the code 50majority for 50% off plus free shipping. So super easy to try this out. They've got produce that travels from the farm to your door for peak ripeness, so you can taste it. Like I say, all the ingredients are really super fresh. They're delicious. They come with the, easy recipes with pictures on it. But again, the huge thing for me, I've made a sesame soy beef bowl. It's sort of reminded me of mapo tofu. I used to work at a Chinese restaurant. And it was like 15 minutes. Super easy. I've made one pan Santa Fe tacos, I think it was. Again, 15, 20 minutes. And I'm going to try a big like pork cannellini soup. That's going to take me longer. But who cares? The soup, you can eat it for a long time.
Right.
So you don't need to... I disaggregate all the time, or I depreciate the time, whatever it is. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But the point is, HelloFresh is great, very quick, and also less expensive, certainly, than takein, and even buying the groceries yourself. There's no waste. Go to HelloFresh.com/50majority. Use the code 50majority. You're going to get 50% off plus free shipping. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. Also, another sponsor that we have today. What do you call a person who speaks the 3 languages?
Trilingual.
Correct. Someone who speaks 2?
Bilingual.
1?
American.
You nailed it. How did you do?
You've done this ad read before.
I did? Yeah. Well, there you go. I did.
Also, that's kind of a joke about how stupid we are over
it's
here.
ridiculous. Only 22% of Americans speak a language other than English at home. Starting a new language this fall, and you can be the exception, not the rule. And how do you do it? Babbel. They'll have you speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. With Babbel, it's so easy to pick up on how to order food, ask for directions, speak to merchants, and you're not going to have to consult the language app while on vacation, etc. It's just also a great introduction and a great way to get your foot in the door and give yourself some confidence.
And good for your brain to teach yourself new things like that.
Huge. And instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a private tutor or fooling yourself with language apps that are little more than games, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. All of Babbel's tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable, they're accessible, and they are rooted in real-life situations delivered with conversation-based teaching. And now they've got a special right now, limited time only. For our listeners, to get you started right now, you get 55% off your Babbel subscription. Only for our listeners at babbel.com/majority. That's 55% off at babbel.com/majority, spelled BABBEL.com/majority. Rules and restrictions may apply. We'll put a link to both those sponsors in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. All right, going to take a quick break. When we come back, Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief and founder of Bolts Magazine, on some really important elections that are coming up in a week from now that you should be paying attention to. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome back to the program Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief and founder of Bolts Magazine. And folks, if you ever need a cheat sheet for really midterm elections, off-year elections, general elections, go to Bolt Magazine, find Daniel on Twitter. Nobody does a more comprehensive overview of these elections than Daniel. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us.
Or
thanks for having me.
On Twitter, right? That's how people can find you.
Yes,
Daniel.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
So, all right, let's start with Ohio. I think last time we spoke to you, it was either in the run-up to or the wake of question, I think it was number 1, which was an attempt to sort of undermine this constitutional amendment in Ohio that's coming up in a week from now. Would just remind us of what that was about, and then we can talk about what's happening a week from today.
You know, that's a great place to start, because when I keep mentioning to people that there's an abortion rights referendum on the ballot in Ohio, I keep hearing, wasn't that already taken care of over the summer? And I think there's been some confusion because of how much attention that referendum got. So what actually happened in, throughout 2023, in the aftermath of Dobbs, is that progressive organizers in Ohio wanted to put a ballot measure on the ballot to codify abortion rights. And Republicans tried to speed a change to the entire process of how you pass a referendum in Ohio, to undermine the abortion rights referendum. So there was a kind of a prequel in August where Republicans proposed raising the threshold to pass a constitutional amendment at the polls from 50% to 60%, which would obviously make it much more difficult to pass an abortion rights referendum. Also, all sorts of other measures that could be on the ballot in coming years. So that actually, there was a very high turnout in August for a special election in an off year. There was already a remarkable sign of engagement. That ballot measure lost by a big margin, because people don't often like to undercut their own power, respectively what's being asked of them. So now there is the main event is actually in a week, which is the vote to actually enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution. And
is there a sense of what's going to happen in that election? I mean, I know if what happened over the summer was a leading indicator, it looks pretty good, but there's this confusion. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, so polling indicates that that the issue 1, which is the next week's vote, is in the lead. Republicans seem to not have given up the way we've seen them give up in other abortion referendums. I think what's just really important in next week's election is that we've seen a lot of referendums around abortion rights since Dobbs in states that already had abortion legalized. California had an abortion referendum. Vermont had an abortion referendum. Kansas had sort of an abortion referendum. But all those states already had abortion rights. I think what's very important in Ohio, not necessarily the first time, but it's a state with an abortion ban that's probably looming if this falls. People are really stepping in, and they're really going to change the availability of abortion access going forward if this passes. So that's why it's feeling like a big deal. It is a big deal. It's going to affect a ton of people, and Republicans are sort of trying right now to say, the governor, I think a few days ago, said if you vote against abortion rights next week, we'll soften the ban that we have planned and things like that, sort of convince people it won't be as extreme. But obviously the ban, there's a 6-week ban that's sort of in court right now that's there, and that's really the horizon that Ohio is.
I like the idea of Republicans saying, just trust us on abortion. Just trust us. It won't be as extreme. We won't, which is, I think there's a general understanding in the public that you can't trust what they say on this, because even on the federal level, after, Dobbs, Lindsey Graham introduced a federal restriction on abortion, one saying it was left to the states. Putting that aside for a second, though, I'm reminded of how contentious the language of the referendum was and the battle over that. What should voters look out for if they're going to the ballot box, and they should be, in Ohio next week, about what the misleading language could indicate and what they should be checking off if they want to protect abortion rights?
Yeah, so there was a lengthy back and forth between the Secretary of State's office, election officials, and people who supported the referendum on what ballot language was going to be used, because I think it was the Secretary of State's office. Now there's a slight hesitation as to whether they were the ones responsible for the ballot language, but they were writing a version of it that was sort of biased, so using some Republican messaging about the content of the referendum, proponents of the referendum just want a clear sense that the yes on issue 1 is to protect abortion access. A complicating factor, Emma, that maybe also gets to another form of confusion is that the August referendum was also named issue 1. And there's some signs that Republicans purposefully labeled this new one issue 1 as well, because there were all these signage in August and July from the left saying vote no on issue 1, and now the positions have been inverted. And if you're for abortion rights, you should have voted no in August, and yes now to the same number issue. And obviously that's not great from the perspective of voter education, public information. So people should maybe make sure that they are. That they're voting on based on how this coming issue 1 is, and not based on how the one in August was.
So it's yes if you want to protect it.
If you favor abortion access, yes. If you want to keep the status quo and not have abortion in the Constitution, that's no. So that's
understood.
That's the current situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should also say that legal marijuana is on the ballot, I think, as well, right? In a week. And I want you to talk about that, but the decision by activists to have these ballot measures this year, as opposed to 2024, what have you done any reporting around that? Because it seems to me it would behoove both those people who want to support abortion and legal weed to have done it in 2024, or maybe not, but it certainly would have helped, I guess, Sherrod Brown, maybe, to have those on the ballot next year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no question that since Dobbs, Republicans have been put on the defensive on the issue of abortion, and that this, especially in a state like Ohio that has leaned right in recent years, and where Senator Brown is going to be in a difficult spot next year. This is an issue they're gonna try and campaign on. I mean, I think maybe the issue of weed is a bit different on the issue of abortion. We've already seen stories of kids in Ohio having been blocked from access to abortion in 2022. And I think also importantly, we've seen how Republicans have tried to game the referendum process in the spring of 2023. They sort of rushed that referendum because it's all they could have done. We're seeing so many bills around the country trying to make it more hard to do initiatives. Now we're seeing, that we could have a whole call where I just list all the states where we've seen bills in just recent years that have done that. So I think there's kind of a clock ticking for any efforts by progressives to put these important issues on the ballot. And I think abortion access, given the stakes, is sort of like, clearly everyone, both for getting it done eventually and just the lives of people affected, I think getting it done the quicker possible was the priority. I don't. Weed, I think, is a different consideration because not that it's not urgent for some people, but maybe a different sort of urgency. Interestingly, there's another initiative already on the horizon, Sam, in Ohio, which people I think would be interested about. It's an independent commission for drawing state lines. I think, or voting rights groups there have already started to work on that to try and put it potentially in 2024 ballot. That's something that also will matter a lot in Ohio, given how the state lines are drawn there to be very, very friendly to the GOP. So, and is there early voting in Ohio? In other words, can people be voting right now? Yes, there is early voting in Ohio. Early indications show that there's a lot of people voting. For now, it's sort of hard to compare to the last equivalent election because it's rare to have such an important election on an odd-year ballot. But it does indicate, for now, we're seeing similar headlines as we saw in August, which is that people are voting. Great. All right, let's move to Pennsylvania. I just read that $17 million at least has been spent on the high court, on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court election, which is pretty extraordinary, it seems to me. And I have a feeling that they'll probably be even spending more, a couple million more by this week. What's at stake in Pennsylvania? Yeah, so there's a Supreme Court election in Pennsylvania. As you said, it's the second of the year only. The first one was in Wisconsin, and I think a lot of people were following that. There's a way in which Wisconsin always attracts more attention on judicial races, but Pennsylvania, for very obvious reasons, anyone should care about Pennsylvania, just if you care about politics federally and nationally. It's a major swing state. One thing that may have blunted the buzz around it up until recently is that the Democrats are sure to keep a majority right now, no matter the result of this election, because the Chief Justice, who's a Democrat, died last year. This is going to fill the Chief Justice's seat. So it's going to be either 5-2 Democratic or 4-3 Democratic, depending on the result. But that doesn't mean that it's not a very, very important election. First, because it could set up, if Republicans gain the seat, it could set up them gaining the seat in a couple of years, which would have very big implications for voting rights and redistricting, especially because this court has been very important for redistricting and helped Democrats gain the U.S. House in 2017 when it struck down a GOP gerrymander. But also, even in the meantime, voting rights in election cases haven't always fallen on party line in Pennsylvania. For instance, there was a ballot, an important ruling a year ago that Democratic side lost that tossed out a lot of mailed ballots during the midterm. So in 2024, we're going to see a lot of lawsuits in Pennsylvania around the election. Unfortunately, that feels like a certainty. It could be of the variety of the more routine variety of whether mail ballots are counted and sorted. But also, if Trump is on the ballot after the election, we know what he tried to do in 2020 and what he could try to do again in 2024. So these seats on the court are just very, very important and attracting a lot of attention. And there are other races in Pennsylvania that you've been watching too, particularly the policing side. Yeah, there's a lot happening in Pennsylvania. I mean, just maybe to stay on the election for a second, which I think a lot of people don't know, that county commissioners in Pennsylvania have immense amount of authority and discretion over how to run elections, whether to have ballot drop boxes, whether to put sheriff's deputies in front of every mail in the drop box, which is done in a few places, which obviously raises questions of civil rights, whether to allow people to fix mistakes on ballot. And I was talking to the head of Common Cause Pennsylvania, a voting rights group, and he estimates that tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ballots, mail ballots, are really at stake here in these procedures. And I a lot of people in 11 months I know will be very stressed about who's going to win the election and what's happening at the county level and all of these rules, and there's going to be a lot of agitation. But it's important to know this is really the next 7 days are really where that's at play in all of these big Pennsylvania counties. A lot of them tipped Democratic in the last time there were these elections in 2019, especially in the suburbs, and that really helped Democrats sort of shield themselves from Trump and his lawsuits and his efforts to game the system in 2020. And now those suburban counties like Bucks County and other places are again putting their county commissions and their board of elections at stake. There's also there's even a fake Trump elector who's running for county commission in the Pittsburgh region. And
this is a big deal because Pennsylvania in 2020 was decided by was it 60,000 votes and maybe less in 2016. That's out of like something like 6-7 million voters. So this is a couple of thousand votes here, a couple of thousand votes there make a huge difference in terms of like whose ballots are counted.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question that we're literally going to hear about. I think there's going to, it's sort of, in a year, we're going to hear people wish they had known about having this week's election this week. And then it's going to be late because people are going to be in office. And this kind of, people in Pennsylvania are more concerned even than what I said, because to go back to our previous discussion, the state Supreme Court has issued some rulings since 2020 that have made it a bit harder to get your mail ballot counted and made it a little more likely that they'll be tossed, as I was describing earlier. So that actually has increased the importance of whether county officials allow you, for instance, to cure your ballot, to fix your ballot. If you forget to put the date on the back of the envelope, even if you've sent it in time, even if it's arrived in time, technically the state has to reject that ballot unless you go and reject it. That seems like potentially a small thing, but we'll be talking about a lot of ballots. And in a tight election, that's the kind of stuff that is very important.
We should also say, we're getting, I am living in Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, and the school board elections are pretty big there too, particularly with all the Moms for Liberty candidates. I mean, this has been a big push for them to take over these school boards as a way, I guess, of banning books of various ilk and also, just sort of impose some type of like anti-trans agenda in all these places.
Yeah, and it all really comes together. All the things we're talking about. I mentioned Bucks County, for instance, which is a very, very large county in the suburbs of Philly. That's really been the one of the key centers of a school board race there. Actually, Moms for Liberty has already made a lot of progress on the school boards there. There's a few. There've been very negative campaigning there. A Republican operative sent sexually explicit mailers to the household of Republicans to like kind of supposedly show the kind of books that are in schools. That's the kind of thing we're seeing there. That's the same county that was talking about the county, as the county commission and election rules. That's the same county where the Republican head of the county is a fake Trump elector from 2020 and remains the head of the party. So all of these different issues in terms of what conservatives are sort of eager to change are all connected.
All right, let's move from Pennsylvania. You had a thread. I mean, there's a general thread, but I thought it was a pretty important one to remind people of in terms of, and particularly at a time where the Supreme Court is pretty iffy on the Voting Rights Act. And it was about Mississippi and the disenfranchisement of folks who have been convicted of a crime and served time in prison. Walk us through this dynamic and what states are really this is becoming or continues to be a big issue.
Yeah, no, it's super important. I think, at Bolt we cover elections and what's at stake, what's on the ballot, what people can influence. I think we always try and keep in mind the conditions on which they're voting and how many people are excluded. And our reporter Alex Burness wrote effectively a a few stories this fall and summer about the people who are left out of the process this fall, because, we could always run stories like that in the sense that there's people excluded from the process in almost every state when it comes to criminal convictions. But the states that are specifically voting this fall have the most restrictive, the harshest, the most punitive laws in the nation, pretty much. And I think you're referencing to. I'm thinking about Mississippi, Virginia now, and Kentucky. Mississippi, according to estimates, national estimates, has the highest rate of people who can't vote because of a past criminal conviction. And I mean, the estimate is that 11% of adults in Mississippi are barred from voting because of a past criminal conviction, and because Mississippi bars people who are convicted of some felonies for life. So, my colleague Alex talked to someone who served 1 year in prison for theft about 20 years ago, and was released 20 years ago, and still has not been able to vote. So that's sort of just the scope of the situation is so huge that it really kind of makes a mockery of the rest of what's going on. I think what the threat was also calling attention to the racism that this is tied to. Originally, Mississippi's system was designed when they drew a state constitution in 1890, and with the very explicit goal in 1890, it was a bunch of white supremacists came together with the goal of finding ways to not allow Black people to vote in Mississippi. And they actually made a list of offenses in 1890 that they thought Black people would be more likely to be convicted of. And those are the ones that people lost the right for life and to vote to life, and everything else was not disqualifying. So that has been modified to some extent over the years, but the basic racism of the criminal legal system still gets imported in the voting rights arena. So right now, 16% of Black adults cannot vote in Mississippi, which is obviously a staggering rate. And just maybe a quick note, I mentioned Virginia, which I think has this reputation of being more being more democratic than these other states. But the Republican governor there this year ended the policy of automatically restoring the voting rights of people who finish a sentence or who leave prison. So at this moment in Virginia, we're back to a system of losing your right to vote for life for any felony conviction, which is extraordinarily rare by national standards. And the fact that that's happening in Virginia under someone who's tried to build a centrist Republican reputation, I think is very important.
And I think it was McAuliffe had reversed that years ago, and then it's been reinstituted by Youngkin. We should just say, I just want to put a finer point on that Mississippi thing, because this is something that we saw in many states in the the former Confederate slave-owning states in the wake of the 15th Amendment, which gave the vote, and you could no longer gave the vote to freed slaves, and you could no longer bar someone from voting based upon race. The name of the game in the wake of Reconstruction was for these states to sort of create a mechanism to as efficiently as possible disenfranchise as many Black people, Black men, as possible at that time. And you saw a Supreme Court not terribly dissimilar in disposition to the one that we have now, basically waving that stuff through. And that was sort of law of the land for 70, 75 years until the Voting Rights Act. And now we're sort of, have been rolling that back. But people should understand that's the way it was done. And there was an understanding, I think, at that time, we can't do this, as efficiently as saying we're not going to allow Black people to vote, because we're not allowed to do that because of the federal Constitution. But if we can come up with a mechanism where if we disenfranchise poor white people, that's okay. But as long as we end up disenfranchising more Black men than white men, we're good. We've picked up some votes. And that's been the strategy for 100 and what 40, 30, 40 years, essentially, for a lot of these states.
Yeah, I mean, to give you just a sense again of scope in Mississippi, the vast majority of people who have lost the right to vote for life in Mississippi are Black. Even though black people represent about 40% or less of the Mississippi population, so that's really the effect now. What's super interesting is that in August there was a surprise decision by a federal court that struck down Mississippi's system of barring people to vote for life, and there was this small moment where it looked like things might be changing. And then the full Fifth Circuit of Appeals stepped in, vacated the ruling, and we're back to where we were now. And it's a very long status quo that dates back to this, like, the 19th century we're discussing. But it's interesting that, like, if you're in Mississippi, cannot vote. The person I was describing earlier who lost the right to vote because of a theft conviction 20 years ago, if you're in their shoes, right, there was this brief moment, this brief glimmer of hope that the doors of the franchise have been opened, that has been taken away. So it's just, it is this very long history, but this constant wave of attacks on the right to vote of people on the ground.
Walk us through just some of the key states where the legislature or the power may sway or be locked in. I have a piece that you wrote from early October talking about Louisiana. That door seems to have, been shut now. Because the governor, a Republican governor, was elected. And now you have the trifecta, as you were. And even though there's going to be an election for the state houses in next week, they're all but over because of lack of candidates, really.
Yeah. So interestingly, the states that are electing the state government I just mentioned, because they're the states with these particularly hostile voting laws. So Kentucky, Virginia, Mississippi, as well as New Jersey are the 4 states that are going to be electing their state governments next week. So their governor and or their state house members and state senate members. The 5th state, Louisiana, has been taken care of, as you were saying. The governorship flipped to Republicans, who therefore gained control of the state government for the first time in 8 years. Interestingly, Democrats had already lost for the state house and state senate before a single vote was cast, because they had Republicans who were running unopposed in the majority of districts in both the state house and the state senate. So Republicans had already won the legislature before a single vote was counted, and then they gained the governorship. In the 4 other states I mentioned, the big one everyone's, I think, watching is Virginia. Virginia, which again doesn't have the reputation of being particularly red anymore, but Republicans are very close to winning control of the state government. They just need to pick up a few seats in the state senate. And Republicans have been very explicit that this is going to have big consequences, including on abortion access, if they gain the trifecta in Virginia. So what the Democrats are trying to do there is prevent a Republican trifecta. Sort of the same in Kentucky, where a Democratic governor is seeking a second term. If he loses, it would hand full control of the state government to Republicans. That's kind of their third gain opportunity. Just a level under in importance, just because Republicans already have a veto-proof majority in Kentucky, and the governor, while has powers, is not quite as decisive perhaps for policy. And then Mississippi and New Jersey, interesting states. One is currently all Republican, one is all Democratic, and each party is trying to keep it. Democrats are surprisingly trying to make a big push to gain the governorship in Mississippi. The governor is sort of engulfed in a scandal there, even if the state is Republican. So that's interesting to watch, but that's also why all of the stuff we were saying earlier about who's allowed to vote and not allowed to vote is very important.
This will be the first real election since 2022. I mean, we've had special elections, and Democrats have done quite well in them. But this is going to be the first one that's going to give us a sense of like purple states and how much things like abortion are playing. And we're going to get a wide array of understanding of where the electorate is. or at least a greater one than we've had since 2022.
Yeah, I think just for the pure question of how things are looking for 2024, I think I would invite people to follow what's happening in Virginia and in Pennsylvania. I mean, Virginia is the clear sense of Democrats running versus Republicans in a way that's nationally recognizable, and the comparison point to the 2020, 2022 elections and whether things have shifted will be interesting. I think especially because Republicans are surprisingly really running on abortion in Virginia. Like we've seen in 2022 or since then, Republicans try to shy away from their position on restricting abortions. I think we were saying that earlier when we were talking about Ohio, but in Virginia they've been pretty explicit again that they will be restrictions on abortion if they win. They've tried to turn the table and make Democrats look extreme on the issue. That's something we did see in other states last year. It didn't work for Republicans then. So I think that's making a lot of people look at Virginia and Pennsylvania too. The state Supreme Court race is a statewide election in potentially the biggest swing state in the country. You can't get a better dress rehearsal than that for the 2024 election.
Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief, founder of Bolts Magazine. Thanks so much for your time today. We'll put a link to Bolts Magazine and your cheat sheet for next week.
Awesome. It's always fun to talk.
All right. Thanks for coming on. All right, folks. Let's just do a recap a little bit of what's happening. The supposedly in the House, they're going to bring up a bill tomorrow, I think it is. It was introduced by Mike Johnson, who, incidentally, when you talk about running from your past record on abortion or gay people or creationism, he worked at the museum. When we started this version of the show, every week somebody had sent in like a creation museum book.
Oh, yeah.
And every week I would read a page or two from it to teach everybody about how...
Got to hear both sides.
Yeah, I mean...
It's a fair show here, yeah.
There was a lot of, like, who knew that we were... only been around for a couple of thousand years. But they put that... I had a phone call to them years ago when I was on Air America. I would do these, like, sort of... I don't know if I would call them prank phone calls. But... And when they were building that thing, they built it in the exact point in the country, which I think has the highest density of people within a 5-hour drive or something like that, radius. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, Mike Johnson introducing a bill, a standalone support Israel bill, as opposed to one support Ukraine, and you know, Biden had or Taiwan, and then there were some like domestic things in the bill that were pretty small that I guess were there as some type of sweeteners for people under the idea put out by the White House. Johnson released a standalone Israel aid bill for $14 billion. With a pay for that comes from the IRS, I should say. That was that $80 billion that came in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. That money to the IRS has already paid huge dividends, both in terms of like expanded auditing of millionaires and in speeding up your returns by the IRS for just average people. Every dollar you spend on the IRS gets you between $5 and $7 return. Mm-hmm. So even if they're doing this to justify from a deficit reduction perspective, which is absurd, but just even using their own logic, it actually increases the deficit, the way that they want to go about paying for it.
And they're fine with that with a Democratic president in office, regardless. Anyway.
Oh yeah, they don't care. I mean, they just the bottom line is Republicans want to cut the IRS. Yeah. You can look at a graph of IRS audits over the past 15 years, And there is almost a 1-to-1 relationship. Every dollar they cut away from the IRS, the ability of the IRS to audit people with money who come with an army of lawyers and accountants goes down. And so the ratio of audits of low income people and wealthy people changes and favors. It's not totally. I mean, they still audit even at when the biggest cuts. They still are auditing rich people more than people living, low income people. But that dynamic is a function of how much you fund the IRS.
Yeah.
And when the IRA was passed, there were people who ostensibly were on the left were talking about the IRS in the exact same way that Republicans do, claiming that the IRS was going to go after more people. There was and I understand skepticism when people say anything, but it was also illogical for the IRS to do this. To do anything but. You had Janet Yellen vow that nobody under $400,000 income was going to see more audits on an annual basis. They were going to audit people getting earned income tax credits less. Those are low income people basically getting a subsidy from the government. And they were going to pick up auditing wealthy people. And it just simply makes sense. You can't afford the risks associated with going after people who have an army of lawyers and accountants if you're understaffed, and the IRS has been.
Yeah, I would say I'm to the left of Thomas Piketty, but if you read his books, Capital in the 21st Century and Capital and Ideology, it's very clear that just a dispassionate look at the world economy shows that we need not even just domestic tax enforcement, but global tax enforcement to be something that we'd figure out this century.
And to be clear, without even having to, I don't even have to engage in the arguments as to whether a deficit is a good thing or a bad thing. The purpose of this taxation should be to minimize wealth disparities, which have gone out of control as in part a function of the IRS leaving, billions upon billions of dollars out there that are owed by wealthy people. Also in part of just the way in which we tax. Work is taxed at a higher rate than money is taxed. The money that you make off of your money is taxed less.
We've cut taxes precipitously since for decades at this point. Obama was instrumental in making many of those Bush tax cuts permanent, and then Trump also came in and cut taxes more. And there's no real political will from the Democratic side to increase them in any meaningful way. So that's part of the problem. The bare minimum is the IRS enforcement.
So it is. The long and short of it is this Mike Johnson legislation, it would appear, is going to be dead on arrival in the Senate. For someone like Mitch McConnell, because it doesn't have a Ukraine funding and Taiwan funding. For someone like Schumer, it's because it purports to cut from the IRS to pay for it. So we'll see what happens. I have no idea how this goes forward. I am not terribly worried about this money not being pushed through, to be totally honest, in the short term.
If Mike Johnson wants to be to bog this down, to bog more money down from going to Israel, I could not be more on board with that project. And again, reminder, we are now, I think it's 17 days out from the government shutdown. Johnson has supposedly floated a brief continuing resolution just to get out of this neighborhood, I guess. But I'm unclear when it would go to Christmas. Unsure. We'll have more on that in the coming days. We're going to take a break, head into the fun half.
just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, but you also get the fun half of the program. And you get the free show free of commercials. Help the show survive and thrive. It is really your support that makes this possible. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary, I guess it's next year, in Brooklyn. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, you guys moving from Manhattan?
Uh-huh. I was thinking about that today. But this show, we're in year 13, I guess, of this show. Right around now. Like right around now. Launched this, I should know that. When we hit 10 years, I was like, yeah, we should have, so it didn't even occur to me.
13? Isn't it older?
The podcast was launched in 2010.
Okay.
The actual show was the first Majority Report was on was a one-off on Tom Sharpling's program in February of 2003.
There we go.
And then this
That's
show,
like the 20-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
that would have been the 20-year. Really, April 1st, 2004 will be the 20th anniversary of this as an
That's what I was
ongoing
thinking.
enterprise.
Yeah.
So maybe we should plan something for that. In the meantime, become a member. Maybe we'll
Get
do
Sharpling back on.
Sharpling would have been on March, but yes, we should do
I
that.
don't think he's been on since I've been here.
Has he not?
I don't think. Maybe
He was
once.
supposed to come on for his book, and then I just got the runaround from him.
Oh, I
I'm
remember
so
that, yeah.
busy now. Whatever. Folks, just a reminder, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. Emma.
Yes.
ESPN.
By the way, thank you, Kowalski, for this. I'm trying to bring more coffee from home these days, and this is this mug that he sent to us very nicely, a travel mug. On ESPN yesterday, we spoke about a very busy week 8 ahead of the trade deadline today in the NFL. Burrow being back, baby Purdy's falling apart, Kirk Cousins injury, all that good stuff, and we also touched on the insane right-wing reaction to the death of the American hockey player in the UK. Because a black guy's skate is the one that hit his neck. And so, of course, it's a manslaughter charges, apparently, says the right wing. YouTube.com/ESPN show. Yep. Ian Miles Chong all over that.
God. Yeah, tonight on Left Reckoning, Malika Jabali talking about her book, It's Not You, It's Capitalism, and also in the postgame might be telling some spooky stories. I do not believe in ghosts, but I do have stories of seeing them. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning if you want to.
What are you talking about?
You've seen a ghost?
I mean, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
Good business.
Yeah, folks, I'm going to be talking about the ghost that I saw in the fun half.
Spooky happenings.
Oh, boy.
Also, I have a lot of juicy gossip. If you want to hear about it, please wire me $10,000 about all the people in this industry. People want to Venmo me. It's at Emma Vigeland.
646-257-3920 is the number. We'll see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no. Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Dinner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dinner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. It is the fun half. I will turn on the phones in just about 5 minutes or so. 646-257-3920. Not quite yet. Hey, baby, on the IM. Why don't you put that crack pipe down and get my pipe up?
Say, baby, put down that pipe and get my pipe up.
Yep. I basically want to keep that on the board until he dies. Until he passes away.
Oh, yeah.
In a couple years then.
I feel like we could do some sort of compilation of like the most cringy right-wing audiobook moments, including the one of Jordan Peterson dreaming about his grandmother's pubes. That one is pretty rough.
I'm not sure I want to have access to that.
Oh, no?
Yeah, I think I'll probably skip that one.
Well, I'm in the spooky Halloween spirit.
Lick butts, not boots. Wow, no Halloween